Have you ever sat quietly on a still afternoon, watching the last light of the day pour gently through your window, and suddenly wondered, what will life really be like after 80? Not the obvious things like whiter hair, slower steps, or fewer phone calls from your grandchildren, but the deeper feelings inside, the silent changes that carry unexpected weight. There are truths that no one has ever told you, or if they did, it was only in passing words, too light to capture the depth of what this stage of life truly brings. At 80, you no longer carry the same burdens you once did, but that doesn't mean life becomes simpler. In fact, the smallest things can catch you off guard. Your circle of friends grows quieter. Your body no longer bounces back from fatigue as it once did. Tasks that used to take minutes now stretch into the entire morning. Sometimes, you feel yourself fading in the eyes of others. And there may come a moment when you find yourself quietly wondering what exactly it is you're still living for. These feelings are not merely sadness or loneliness. They are real and honest parts of the human journey as we move through the final chapters of life. But because they are real, if we can recognize them and listen to them, we can also move through them with more strength and peace. In today's video, we will gently reflect on 5 quiet but powerful truths about life after 80, not to frighten you or add more worry, but to help you feel understood, supported, and perhaps discover a more peaceful way to live through the challenges that come with this age. If you've ever had a quiet day where you felt something shifting inside you, if you've ever wondered what's truly changing in your life, then this video might feel like a conversation meant just for your heart. Stay with me until the end, because sometimes all it takes is one timely story to bring calm back to the soul. Reality 1. The quiet shrinking of your social circle. At the age of 80, many begin to feel a quiet shift in the world around them. It's not that the sounds are gone, but the familiar voices of the past have slowly faded. Sometimes the absence comes so gently, without warning or noise. It's a call that no longer comes, an invitation that stops repeating, or a familiar face that vanishes from the morning coffee shop. And then, one morning, you realize the phone doesn't ring as often, dinner feels too quiet, and the space in your heart seems to grow with every little thing that is no longer there. But you know what? While that feeling is real, it is not the end. It is a gentle reminder that we are entering a new chapter of life, a chapter where we are called to befriend ourselves more deeply and begin to expand our circle in a different way, one that is more intentional, more heartfelt, and filled with meaning. Because connection has never truly disappeared, it's simply waiting for us to reach for it again in a new way. I remember a conversation with Mr. Henry, an 83-year-old gentleman living in Ohio. He once had a close-knit group of friends, and every morning they would meet at the little cafe on the corner. No one had to text or call in advance. They simply showed up, laughed, and shared their mornings together. But then, one by one, people stopped coming. Some moved away to live with their children in another state, others couldn't drive anymore, and some had passed on. Henry still went to that cafe out of habit, but now he sat alone at the same corner table, gazing out the window, waiting for something familiar. He told me once that loneliness at this age isn't always about being physically alone. It's the feeling that the world you once knew so well has drifted too far away. But instead of letting that feeling take over, Henry did something that deeply moved me. He decided to stop waiting. He signed up for a book club at the local library, where he met new friends. They didn't share his past, but they connected in the present. He also began writing letters to his old friends, not to blame them for losing touch, but simply to say he missed them and still treasured their memories. Slowly, his life began to change. His mornings were no longer so quiet. He started receiving postcards and invitations for coffee from new people. And while those connections didn't replace the ones he had lost, they gave him a new kind of warmth. He told me that loneliness is real, but it doesn't have to stay forever. Every time you open your heart just a little, you push it a little further away. Being 80 doesn't mean the end of relationships. In fact, it can be the beginning of a different kind of friendship, gentler, more meaningful, and more sincere. These new friends may not come from wild adventures or noisy meetings. They may come from a quiet Sunday morning prayer group, a seniors dance class, or even from a neighbor you've never spoken to before. What matters most is that you no longer wait for connection to come to you as it once did in youth. Now, you are the one who creates and nurtures it. Sometimes all it takes is a phone call you choose to make, a suggestion to share tea after a walk, or simply a kind smile to someone standing next to you at the grocery store. These small acts are the threads that tie the circle back together, reminding us that even as time takes some things away, it leaves behind many opportunities, if we're willing to open up to them. If you feel the silence growing louder around you, please don't think you've been forgotten. You are not invisible. You are a cherished part of this world. The stories you carry, the wisdom you hold, and the warmth of your heart are all worth hearing and sharing. But just like anything precious, they must be given to be received. And if today you find yourself reading these words, maybe it's time to call that old friend, to join the community group you've been hesitant about, or simply to step outside, breathe in the morning air, and smile at yourself. Because at any age, and especially after 80, connection no longer comes from noise, but from a heart that still wants to love and be loved. You can still write new chapters in your life, filled with new relationships, simple yet meaningful conversations, and the brave choice not to let loneliness define the rest of your days. Your social circle may change in shape, but a heart that remains open will never feel small. Reality 2. The body no longer recovers the way it used to. At 80, the body begins to send signals that are no longer whispers, but clear and honest reminders of its limits and changes. The small aches that once disappeared after a good night's sleep can now linger for weeks. A mild cold might be enough to keep you resting in bed for several days. And perhaps what surprises many older adults the most isn't the pain itself, but the slow pace of recovery. You may still eat well, take gentle walks, maintain a healthy lifestyle, yet your body sometimes chooses to slow down in its own way, as if quietly saying it's time for a different rhythm, one that is softer, deeper, and more mindful. I once spoke with James, an 84-year-old man living in North Carolina. He had always valued staying healthy and hadn't missed a single morning exercise in over 30 years. But one afternoon, while tidying up his backyard, he tripped over a small stone and fell. There was no serious injury, just a scrape and a sore hip. Yet what confused him was how that simple fall made it hard to return to his normal routine. The soreness stayed, his steps slowed, and each time he stood up, it took more effort than before. At first, James felt frustrated. He couldn't understand how such a small event could change so much of his daily life. But gradually, he began observing his body more closely. He stopped forcing himself to do everything as he used to, and instead learned to adjust. Rather than brisk walks through the park, he chose to stroll slowly, pausing often to admire blooming flowers or listen to birdsong. He reduced the number of workout sessions but increased his time for relaxation. He also began practicing deep breathing and morning meditation, things he once thought were unnecessary, and something beautiful happened. The more he listened to his body, the more he realized he wasn't growing weaker. He was living more deeply. He said that if in the past he exercised to feel strong, now he moved to feel connected. If he once walked to stay active, now he walked to notice the quiet beauty around him. That shift in perspective helped him not only accept his body's changes, but also grow to love it more than ever. The truth is, after 80, recovery no longer comes quickly. A single sleepless night can leave you drained all day. A poorly digested meal might slow you down well into the next. But if you see these moments not as signs of decline, but as reminders to live more gently, more slowly, and with more love for yourself, it all becomes much easier to bear. You don't need to go back to who you were to feel strong. If you still want to step outside and breathe the fresh morning air, still look forward to the sunlight warming your face, still feel the joy of sharing a smile, then you are living fully. And if today your body asks for more time to recover, then let it rest, let it be cared for, and let it be soothed with patience and gratitude. Your body has carried you through seasons of joy, through losses and triumphs, through years of change. Now, it is simply reminding you that each step should be lighter, each movement more careful, and every breath more appreciated. When you understand that, you will stop worrying about the slowness and start seeing presence in each step and wisdom in each pause. And that, truly, is the greatest gift that aging gives us. Not the stamina of youth, but the depth of understanding, the grace of slowing down, and the quiet gratitude for every moment we still get to live in this body. Let each day pass not with regret for what once was, but with joy for what still is, because you are still here, still alive, still fully yourself, in a new way that is gentler and deeper than ever before. Reality 3, the growing need for help. Growing need. At some point in life, especially after you've passed 80 seasons, something begins to shift quietly. You start to notice that tasks which once felt simple now require an extra hand, a steady support, or just a little more time. But what truly matters isn't the change itself, it's how you feel when facing it. There may be a hint of embarrassment, a flicker of hesitation, or even a passing sadness when you realize you're no longer as strong as you once were. But if you pause and look deeper, you'll find a quiet beauty hidden within the need for help, the beauty of connection, of trust, and of allowing yourself to move more gently through life. I remember Michael, an 87-year-old man living in Georgia. He was a doer all his life. He built his home with his own 2 hands, drove through rain and sun to provide for his family, and never once complained or asked anyone for help. But one autumn, he began feeling dizzy each time he walked down the stairs. He kept trying to do everything the way he always had, until one day, while reaching for a box on a high shelf, he lost his balance and fell. No major injuries, just a few bruises. But that fall felt like a wake-up call. His daughter came by and suggested installing handrails in the kitchen, lowering the shelves, and organizing his medicine drawer. At first, he refused. "I'm fine," he said, but eventually, he realized that saying no to help didn't make him stronger. It only made him more tired and made his daughter worry even more. One evening, sitting together on the porch, he looked at her and said softly, "Maybe it's time I admit that I don't have to do everything on my own anymore." That one sentence didn't make him look weaker in anyone's eyes. On the contrary, it made him more relatable, more human, and deeply wise. From that day forward, Michael opened up. He not only accepted help, but began reshaping his life to better suit the present. Instead of going out to shop on rainy days, he asked a young neighbor to pick up a few things. Instead of climbing up to change a light bulb, he called a familiar handyman, and to his surprise, he discovered that he wasn't just less burdened, but now had more conversations, more laughter, and a peace of mind he never realized he'd been missing. Many of us grow up believing that independence means doing everything ourselves, never troubling anyone, never needing anyone. But when you really look at it, true independence isn't about struggling through alone. It's about knowing when to rest, when to lean on someone, and how to care for your health and autonomy in a way that's wiser and more sustainable. Grab bars in the bathroom, assistive tools in the kitchen. Clearly labeled medicine boxes are not symbols of weakness. They are signs of thoughtful preparation, wise living, and the desire to live longer, healthier, and with more ease. You don't have to be strong in the old way anymore. Strength now might look like saying, "I could use a little help." It might mean sitting down and letting someone else handle a small task. It might be opening the door to someone not to carry your burden, but simply to walk beside you, to share the road, and make the journey feel lighter. Help, when given and received with love, always carries 2 gifts. It lightens the load and deepens the bond. And both of those are priceless after 80, when a peaceful and warm day means far more than the noisy chase of old achievements. If you're feeling unsettled because the things you used to do have become more difficult, know that you're not alone. Many others your age are also learning new ways to live freely within what once felt like limitations, and they found peace, not by doing less, but by loving themselves more. And you. Maybe today you can ask yourself, can I give myself a bit of ease by accepting a helping hand? If the answer is yes, then congratulations. You are not just living longer. You are living with greater depth, with gentleness and with quiet dignity. Reality 4. When the world starts seeing you as a shadow, there's something that few people say out loud, yet almost everyone at 80 feels deep down. It's the sense that you are slowly being looked through in a world you once helped build. It's not about being hated or pushed aside, but more about how your presence starts to fade in the eyes of others, as if everything you once did, contributed, and sacrificed has been gently blurred by time. That feeling doesn't shout, but it lingers. A distracted glance from a cashier, a doctor directing questions to your child instead of you, or a conversation where you're expected to only listen but not join in. All of it creates a quiet sorrow that's hard to name. You're still here, but it's as if the world is slowly forgetting you're present. I once met Helen, an 85-year-old woman who had spent her life as a devoted history teacher. Whenever she shared stories about wartime America or the civil rights movement, her eyes would light up with vivid memories. Yet one day, during a tour at the local museum with a group of seniors, a young guide walked past her without the slightest idea that this gentle woman had actually lived through the decades she was describing. When I asked Helen how she felt, she simply gave a soft smile and said, "I'm used to it, but sometimes it still makes my heart ache a little." That sentence stayed with me for a long time, because no one should ever get used to being forgotten, especially not those who were once the backbone of a family, the guiding light for their children, the living witness to a turbulent chapter in history. But I also saw how Helen didn't let that sadness take over. She began writing a blog where she shared her old memories, posting short reflections about her youth in senior-focused social media groups. Before long, she was receiving hundreds of comments, thank you notes from young readers eager to understand the past, and heartfelt messages from peers who felt seen again through her words. Helen's story reminds us of something powerful. You don't need to wait for someone to hand you your presence back. You've always had it. The world might be forgetful, but you have the choice to not let yourself fade into silence. Keep telling your stories. Speak up when you have something to say. Raise your hand when there's something worth adding. Write letters. Share memories. Laugh loudly. Live fully, because every time you choose to stand up and share, even just a small piece of yourself, you are reminding not only others but also yourself that you still have value and are still living a life that matters. The feeling of being overlooked doesn't have to turn into pain. It can be an invitation to light up your place in the world again, and you don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes, a steady gaze, a warm smile, or a gentle word is enough to remind everyone around you that you are still an important part of this place. You are not a shadow. You are the light of generations, the living memory of time, the bearer of wisdom and grace. And if someone forgets that, you have every right to remind them, not with anger, but with calm presence, quiet strength, and quiet pride. Because truthfully, sometimes the world needs you to remind it that value doesn't lie in youth or appearance, but in experience, in patience, and in the stories only time can teach. And you, yes you, are the most vivid living proof of that truth. Reality 5. The emptiness of losing a clear sense of purpose. When you reach your 80s, life begins to slow down in its own unique rhythm. The schedule is no longer packed. The phone no longer rings constantly with work matters. Your children have grown up and moved on with their own lives, and the responsibilities that once weighed heavily on your shoulders have been lifted. For many, this is a time of rest and quiet. But for others, when the noise of all those busy years fades, what remains is a vast stillness, where the question, "What am I living for now?" begins to echo more clearly than ever. I remember the first time I spoke with Daniel, 88 years old, who had spent over 40 years as a high school teacher. Throughout his teaching career, he was loved by students, respected by colleagues, and every day had a clear reason for him to get up in the morning. But after retirement, he started to feel like a watch with its battery removed, still intact, but no longer moving. "I'm still healthy," he said, "but I don't know what I'm here for anymore." No more classrooms. No more students' laughter. No one waiting for me each morning. He didn't say it sadly, just quietly, but the weight of it stayed with me for a long time. And that's a feeling many older adults know well, not because life has become difficult, but because there is an unnamed emptiness inside. When you've spent a lifetime giving, guiding, and contributing, it can feel disorienting when no one seems to need you in the same way anymore. But that doesn't mean you're no longer important. It simply means your role is shifting, and you now stand before a chance to redefine your purpose in a brand new way. Susan, age 83, once spent several years after retirement just moving quietly through her days. She tended her plants, watched television, baked her familiar recipes, but always felt something was missing. Then one summer, her granddaughter came to stay for a few weeks. Susan began telling her stories from the past, things she never thought were special. Yet her granddaughter listened with fascination, took notes, and even wrote a school paper that earned praise from her teacher. That moment made Susan realize that what she had once thought were just old tales were actually priceless gems for the younger generation. From that point on, she wrote a page each week about her life, which slowly became a treasured collection her family now sees as a legacy. You see, a sense of purpose doesn't have to come from big, world-changing actions. It can be as simple and meaningful as a meal you cook for a neighbor, a handwritten letter to an old friend, a kind word to someone feeling down, or a story you pass on to preserve your family's memory. Each of these small acts becomes a thread that ties you to life, a way to feel needed, heard, and still an important part of the larger picture. You no longer need to race against time. At this stage, you have the right to live slowly, to live deeply, and to live truly. Each morning begun with gratitude, each evening closed with a gentle smile, is how you give meaning to every breath. Purpose is no longer something you chase out in the world, but something you create from the quiet strength of your own heart. If today you've ever asked yourself, what am I still good for? Trust that the answer doesn't lie in the grand things you think you've missed, but in how you move through each day with kindness, with eyes that still see beauty, and with a heart still willing to give warmth. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You only need to keep showing up with all the gentleness and wisdom you've carried through this long journey, because that alone, in itself, is a deeply meaningful purpose. Now that you've joined us in exploring these honest slices of life after 80, perhaps you've come to see that aging is not just about a weakening body or shifting relationships. It is a far more delicate journey, where every emotion and every moment of stillness holds the weight of time and deep experience. And even if there are moments of emptiness, a slower pace, or a quiet loneliness that's hard to name, you are still living a chapter that is beautiful, real, and deeply worthy of respect. These realities may arrive unexpectedly. They may leave you uncertain, but once you realize you are not alone, that millions of others are also feeling these same things, everything starts to feel a little lighter, because you don't have to walk through it all using only your own strength. You can walk with others, even if it's just through a shared story, a compassionate glance, or a gentle moment like this one right now. If today, something you heard made you feel understood, made your heart soften, or inspired you to see life in a new light, that is a beautiful sign. Hold on to it. And if these reflections touch something within you, don't hesitate to subscribe so we can continue walking together through the next part of the journey. Every subscription is more than just a number. It is an outstretched hand, a thread of connection between hearts moving through this special season of life. We would also love to hear from you. If there was something that spoke to you or stayed with you today, please leave a comment with the words, "I'm still here." It's more than a sentence. It's a gentle declaration that you are still present, still living fully, still an essential part of this life. Always remember, it is never too late to live true to yourself. Every day you choose to keep going with trust and love is another day you are giving life its meaning again. We'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue to uncover the quiet, powerful truths that make this stage of life so profoundly beautiful.